Hello there. So like a lot of people, I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing lately, but I've been a little concerned about whether or not I could get a 5-star island. So a lot of people, you look at their 5-star islands, and they're pretty dense, they're highly planned, and they look magnificent in all honesty. But as it turns out, I have just recently gotten my own 5-star rating. And so what I wanted to do today was show that for those of those that are afraid that maybe they could never get to this point, that it's not as difficult as you might think. That you don't have to have, one of these like kind of urban planned, super dense environments to get to this 5-star ranking. So I just wanted to, I wanted to give a quick little tour of my island to show just how, essentially kind of show what the bare minimum is, I guess, to be honest, but to, also show that it's not as intimidating as it might seem. So right off the bat, here we are in the town square, and this is Tideline's flag, just a peaceful, crudely drawn beach with what can only be generously referred to as a palm tree in it. I'm right near my airport over here, so if you were to first come into Tideline, you would see almost nothing. There's no ostentatious displays, no, big central attractions here. Just an old weathered sign saying, hey, where you going? And then climbing back up over here. So this was a trade-off where I wanted to have some kind of a display over near my town square, but I also wanted to start trying to grow some hybrids. So I kind of split the difference, and this is not a min-maxed garden plot for making hybrids, but it kind of accomplishes what I needed to do. I got a little bit of space to make hybrids if I want them of various types, and then also to help fill out this space here between my paths and my town square. So if you look at my map, you can see that I make extensive use of paths, but they're also very practical. Not much in the way of having anything that's just kind of like designed heavily. It's mostly all utilitarian. So if we go down this dirt path here, we kind of get to a little boonies area, inhabited by, this is Tipper. She's a cow, and she's adorable, and she lives over here. And when she first moved in, once I realized I was getting a cow, I decided to give her her own little miniature pasture, so she can graze here and eat some apples. Barbed wire fence helps evoke the whole backwoods aesthetic. Meanwhile, down here, this is the house of Sheldon the squirrel, who is super into exercise, like all jock-type villagers. And when I first started out with him, he had said that he wanted a place where he could get his cardio in and do some running. So I thought it'd be really cool to set his house near the river and the beach, so that he had two different areas where he could jog if he wanted to. And since he was near the river, I also thought it'd be a cool idea to, kind of give him this sort of outdoor lived-in thing, where he's, he uses the river to clean his clothes. A lot of my decisions in my designs are actually based on some of the first furniture that I got when I started playing the game. So this washboard was one of the first things I forget if that's a DIY, if you acquire it, but once I got that was something I kind of built around for this whole theme. I found a bike randomly in a balloon, and it's like, hey, he likes cardio, here's a bike. And, that's kind of how that all flowed. If we come back down through the other way, we have this is probably the closest thing to something super planned. So these are the last 3 plots that I had set up for my island. And I decided at some point that I wanted to have something kind of evoking a subdivision or a suburb or something like that. And that's what these last 3 plots wound up doing. Just all nice and neatly lined up into a little row. And here is a pig named Panchetti, I believe. And I've got one of the octopus boys, got Octavian in there, which is why he has this parabolic dish. If you've ever seen the inside of Octavian's house, you'll understand why I decided to put the dish out here. Oh yeah, he's out there. He is super out of space, so I wasn't entirely sure if I would find a place to put that antenna, and yeah, once Octavian came, it's like, it'd be pretty funny. He's also got a little Men in Black renegade gnome out here, so cool stuff. But again, super basic. And then over here is Boris, who I happened to find on a tarantula island. And the inside of his house, which he's not home, but Boris's theme is kind of like Egyptian or like ancient culture. So, hey, give him a little pot. And also kind of decorate this bridge going into this little cherry orchard area. So a lot of, as I mentioned before, a lot of my plans for development just came from items I got and I built little stories around. as far as like the villagers' own personalities and things they might like. And what do you want, Panchitty? Anyway, over here, this is the house of Paula, who is a hippie bear. And because she's a hippie, and I found this rainbow inflatable sofa pretty early on that built, you know, those were the seeds from which I built her whole thing, which is she's, you know, super natural, all about nature and good vibes. So I gave her this little flower garden and slowly but surely grew these hybrids so I could spread them out into like a little sun pattern. So, you know, just super flower child thing going. Gave her a hose so she could water her stuff. And you might see these little stations, these little hydration stations around the island. And, you know, in my little Tideline lore, this is her creation. These are actually orange trees. They don't have any fruit on them right now because I had to get a bunch of wood for a hot item, so... But normally those have oranges on them. But again, super simple, super basic. The way the calculation works for getting a 5-star island, it's dependent on number and types of items that you set out, is my understanding. And it seems to, or if I understand it correctly, you're more rewarded for having a distribution of items as opposed to like tightly packed stuff. So like you see a lot of the islands that are densely packed, but they're also densely packed in a lot of different areas. So again, my understanding of it is that, like, say having 40 items within like 1 square of the map you see down there isn't worth as much as, say, having 40 items strewn across 4 or 5 different squares of the map. So what I tried to do to kind of push myself over the edge was just add a bunch of different items and DIYs where they made sense for my little villager stories. Every little bit counted and it all adds up in the end. So over here is my house, which we're not going to be going in because there's nothing special going on in there. This is just, I've done so much focusing outside that my inside is big, and it's just mostly made up of foraged items, so not doing anything in there for now. But the biggie is that this is my seasonal display area. This, you know, depending on what events are going on in the season, this is where I'm going to be making my main outdoor displays, connected by a dirt path, because this is basically my own personal courtyard, but everybody can play along. Got lots of interactables for people to mess with, tulip surprises, and the super weird. First time I saw that, I didn't know what to think. Still don't know what to think. Here's another one of Paula's hydration stations. This fell out of a tree one day, and I was like, you know what? That's pretty cool. So this is the main part of my village, the main island on the map here. Most of the houses are here. They're mostly placed in out-of-the-way places, so I could have as much open space as I could to mess with stuff. Over here in the eastern part of the island, I tried to keep this was like sort of my pristine area. I decided pretty early that this would be where my cherries would go once I got cherries, and that would be its primary defining thing, is that this is just this sort of natural, pure area, for the most part. Again, had to make some tiny embellishments here and there in order to get myself into that 5-star rating. These lanterns are actually a pretty late addition. As is this portable bathroom right here. I found this in a balloon, this little life preserver, and so that was enough to finally make me buy this lifeguard station. Again, tiny things strewn about. And more villager lore! So this is one of the first DIYs that I got with trash. I think that's for everybody. I think there's a steady progression of how DIY recipes work for getting trash. But I thought this fit in pretty cool, or this fit in pretty keenly with Paula's whole deal of like trying to make, you know, find natural beauty. So I think I gave her one of these. It might even be in her house right now. And again, that's kind of my own little villager story, is that she's just making trash into pretty things and strewing about. She's gracious like that, you know, along with her hydration stations. Hey, there's Boris. Now this is a prime example of something that I actually kind of cribbed from online. I saw a lot of people using these little vending, these stalls, and I didn't realize when I first got the recipe that the stalls could be heavily customized. There's pre-made patterns, and then multiple colors you can have them in. And so I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do with these? And there was another idea that I saw of putting little dolls or tchotchkes behind the stalls to make it look like they're actually being run by people. And so I had these little Maristroika dolls. So I've got these little nesting dolls. There we go. That's better. So I decided to customize these nesting dolls, and they're all running the stalls. And this recipe actually came from my eldest niece, and that was very nice of her. So we have a little jewelry stand, a mirror to check yourself out and get the little jewelry, a concession stand, coconut drinks and fruit, and then that is a Ronshu, the misshapen Ronshu goldfish, along with the vendor reading a nature magazine, or at least it's turned to a resort page. So this came about just from watching stuff online, seeing if there's anything that would fit what I was trying to go for as far as not having my island be too clustered, but also trying to make it feel a little vibrant somehow. And that most of these are actually DIYs helps bring that total up for the 5-star rating. So nice little path leads into the Able Sisters, which is kind of what makes this a natural extension of the Able Sisters. Again, I put a lot of my structures up against cliffs or up against rivers to try to maximize my space, keep it open, keep it looking as natural as possible. It made a lot of sense to kind of have, like, you know, little tiny pop-up businesses between the beach and, you know, the proper commerce area. So there's Able Sisters. Nice picturesque bridge next to a waterfall. Love it. This is something I'm super, super proud of how this turned out. Oop. Let me get some money. So, I'm super proud of this little area here. My nooks got upgraded just like everybody else's did after about 30 days and spending and everything else. And I'm sure like a lot of people have, I kind of made my own recycling / junkyard area as there was in the original GameCube Animal Crossing. This is actually a pretty handy spot where if I'm doing fishing or bug hunting very late at night, I just stack everything up here so I can easily just quickly go back and get it. Yeah, my house is down there, but I kind of like the idea of just dumping stuff over here next to the store so I can just come in the next day and just pick everything up. Not to mention it just looks pretty funny. At one point I actually had, when I found Tarantula Island, which is also where I found Boris, and I had this whole thing filled up with tarantulas, and I had a stump here and I was just sitting on it and took a picture, and it was super funny. But I love the way this turned out with this path and this flower garden. These are also orange trees here. This used to be this used to be a money tree, but it happened to pop up just, the gold spot was perfectly in between these two trees, so I figured I'd go ahead and keep it. But I've got a real 1950s vibe going here, like a 1950s drugstore. That is money. Come here. Oop, that's money too. There's a really nice, like I said, there's the 1950s drugstore vibe going here. Got this candy machine and the hobby horse. A camper gave me the recipe for the raccoon statue, which of course I gotta put it there. Where else would that go? Got some hedges. It's just so lovely right here. Just take that in for a moment. So these paths, my pathing idea is that the stone path is the main path through the entire village. It runs from the airport and it ends at the museum. And so all these little side paths are just detours to different areas of the island. So before I go to the museum area, here's another little picturesque spot. This is a lovely pond that was naturally formed with my island. And once I first saw it and saw how there was just this pond and the waterfall, and it was naturally cradled here, nestled in these cliffs, I knew pretty early on I was going to turn this into some kind of like special grove. And everything here just kind of reflects that. Found a bamboo island pretty early on, got some bamboo in there. I kind of forgot, I assumed that, I erroneously thought that the cherry trees would be what turned into cherry blossoms, not the hardwood trees. So I planted a bunch of cherry trees here thinking they were going to turn pink, and they didn't, but that's fine, because that's only a temporary seasonal thing anyway, so even if I had the hardwood trees here, it wouldn't have been that much better. But the Imperial Bridge in the back was the very last touch, to just kind of help tie it all together. Little snapping turtle. I love that this had just enough space to put him in here. Got the little cherry garden stones with the petals. So yeah, just this sort of like cool natural-esque, that sounds terrible, this cool hideaway that I created just from the existing geography that I had. I had to massage that river a little bit to get that bridge to fit on there the way I wanted it to, but for the most part, this was how I found it. Just had to plant some trees and get very creative. Speaking of creative, these dirt paths, so there isn't a pattern that emulates a kind of like worn, trodden path. And I didn't want to get QR codes to do it. I wanted to see how much I could do with just what was in the game itself. So, to that end, I came up with a compromise. I have dirt paths with weeds and everything plucked around it. So it kind of from a distance, and if you squint real hard, it's kind of like it's a path that has been worn in. So like more story stuff, I was like, okay, there's this little hidden area that's been all forgotten, and there's no more development over here. Do not enter, what have you. So undeveloped stuff, and then we get over here, and this would have been the next area I was going to develop if I hadn't gotten 5 stars, because I hadn't, fully connected this half of the island with everything else yet. This is the house of Stitches the teddy bear. And Stitches is a little patchwork teddy bear, and he is super adorable. And so because he's a patchwork teddy bear, the idea that I came up with pretty early on was to give him his own little, like, daycare/kindergarten play space. So we got the Nook Miles playground equipment, and the sandbox. I found this in a tree, I believe, and I just love how all the colors work together in their own little way. Like, you get the primary colors. It's this, again, daycare, kindergarten thing. Position this just right along this little natural notch in my river to make it like a little kiddie water slide. This was a money tree that I just left the stump for because the stump looked great right there. And this toy box was a donation from my lovely sister. We've both been playing this game a lot. So then, now one thing that you might realize is that there's a lot of weeds in this island. And you might be wondering, maybe you don't know this, but weeds don't seem to matter that much for getting a 5-star ranking. So if you're like me, and you actually like the look of some weeds in parts of your island, don't be afraid of it. It's not going to hurt you. If it hurts you at all, it seems to be so minimal that it can be overcome. That's the conclusion that I've come to. So, yeah. The weeds, they look nice. They make it look natural. The weeds look very cool in this game, so. Apple trees for this side of the island. Again, going with the whole kindergarten aesthetic. What says kindergarten more as far as fruits go than apples for the teacher? Tiny little story spaces here on the beaches. Just, look at this, just perfect for 2 people to go ahead and chill out, and hey, if their kid came from Stitch's kindergarten daycare, then hey, there's a sandcastle that they probably made. Tiny touches throughout the island make a huge difference. Okay, so up here is my campsite, and I wasn't entirely sure what to do with it once I first got this DIY for this part of the story. Because I already knew that I wanted to keep the east side of the island pristine for the cherries. And Stitches had already been set up over here on the west side. And early on, my museum was actually pretty close to where my courtyard area is for my house. So there wasn't really a wide open space except for here to put the campsite. And like a lot of the other things in my island, I decided to build around it and kind of build a story around it. So, basic campsite, campfire seats, sleeping bags, water. Of course, there should be natural water for a campsite. And also so you can probably quickly put out your fires. I also managed to get these DIYs for the garden stones, which helps. Again, notice how many weeds there are. Weeds, flowers strewn about. A lot of this is just natural wilderness that has been mostly untouched, and then some of it is my own touch to try to make it look wilder. I've tried very hard to maintain a natural look, or at least to help, or to even accent some of the natural beauty of the island. And I just love how this turned out. Now this, though, is deliberately meant to be unnatural, because this is the secret beach where Red will show up. And so once that information first came down for that patch, I was like, okay, what can I do to gussy this up? Oh, I know. A black market for art should probably be a little bit more discreet. I just love how comical this is, putting these fake trees here. Now, what's the story with this whole area over here? So this was, I think, one of my, probably the fourth or 5th plot that I had to put down. And like everything else, I decided to put it, way out in the middle of nowhere. Or I tried to put it up against areas, again, to keep more space open. And so my decision here was that, okay, if part of this is going to be wilderness, wouldn't it be cool to have like have a dichotomy between, somebody's own land that's all nice and well kept, leaves are raked, lawn is mowed, rich furniture with this patio, they've got their own personal pond. How cool would it be to have all that and just have it contrasted with nothing but wilderness and natural beauty on the other side? So that was the idea here. There used to be a mouse named Penelope that lived here. She is gone because I have courted Gaston. Gaston was the one that gave me this raccoon statue. He is a rabbit, and he's really cool, and he was one of the first villagers I ever got in the GameCube Animal Crossing. So I actually went out of my way to buy a Gaston amiibo card, and he is now going to be moving in. And I am so happy that I've given him this lovely, he's inheriting this massive estate, which I'm definitely not done with yet. I'm not done with any of this, by the way. I just wanted to get all my thoughts down since I just barely got 5 stars. So yeah, this will be Gaston's palatial estate pretty soon, and I'm so happy. Okay, so moving on from the wilderness, it's kind of a transitional thing here. There's not a lot going on. This is still, again, all mostly what was already here. But now we see, you know, it's kind of connecting back down to civilization. We're back on the main path. So now up here, this is Flurries House, and they are a white hamster. And there's my first little 5-star lily of the valley, or whatever they're called. Look at it. Look at it. It's the proof. It validates me. So Flurry didn't have much of a story going on. She was just a really cute little white hamster. So I kind of built around it. Again, trying to make the most of what I had. So these were the default furniture items for this plot. And I figured, okay, well, a log table would be great as a display counter. And hey, she's next to the river. I honestly do not know Flurry's gender, so they will work for now. They have this bucket, they have a river. So what if they were like a flower salesman? But then how do I contrast that with the flowers that Paula's growing down there in the other level? Well, they'll all be pink, you know, which is like, you know, they're a white hamster and they're super cute and adorable, so try to get some of the most adorable little pink flowers to put here with them. And the log, these are actually furniture items, not fence items, so which means they're going to count differently into the tally for your 5-star, but they fit a lot better than any of the fence options for what I was trying to do here, especially since, again, I was building off of the items that I had to make for this lot. The rest of my second tier, again, still mostly wilderness. I can't stress this enough. You don't have to clutter up your island. You don't have to pack it with, you know, stacks upon stacks of items, or recreations of video game worlds, or I've seen a lot of recreations of Japanese streets, which are really cool, but if you want 5 stars and you don't want to have your island so packed and congested, you know, if that's not the way you want to play, trust me, you can get to 5 stars without all of that. That is Kurlos. He is a ram, kind of a mountain ram. So again, just little tiny things to try to build off of what was already here. So mountain ram, getting some fresh water, another bucket, another light, and that's about it. If I ever get any more log type furniture to go over here, like I want to have like bundles of wood stacked up around here and kind of build a little lumberjack story for him in the future. And finally, we come to my museum. Super early on, I knew that I wanted to put the museum at the very top of my island. I selected my island on the basis of having, if you look at the map, I selected it on the basis that I had this little like 3rd tier plateau at the very top. And I was like, hey, I want to put my museum there. And then I quickly found out that I could not do that in the beginning of the game, and I was going to have to wait a very long time. The museum, like I said, was originally where my courtyard area is over there. So over time, once I got access to this part of the island, eventually I was able to make my dreams come true. These were actually the first inclines that I built, because I knew I wanted to have some sort of like, some sort of fancy stairway or lead up to it. But these inclines are 2 wide, and the door is 3 wide. Or yeah, something like that. So the only way to really get any symmetry out of this is to use 2 inclines in some way. I did want to have them horizontally at first, but that took up a little bit too much space and it was a little too awkward, and I settled on this instead. And you know, it's like, hey, if I'm going to separate these 2 out, I can put something here. I forget what this fossil is called, but it's really silly, but it looks cool. More of these stone lion dogs, more DIYs. And so part of the reason why I wanted to put my museum up top was because I could then build out from it to kind of make it more of like an appealing tourist attraction. So like this, most of this tier is taken up by this kind of stone platform. So, you know, you got your stacks, you got your vending machines, This vending machine was donated to me by my sister, which is super awesome because it matches my drink machine much better. She also gave me these benches, which happen to match my railing. So you have a little refreshment and, kind of like relaxation area after you've taken your tour with Blathers. And then on this side, for the couples, we have this, nice wooded walkway. And there's the fountain, which pretty much everybody is going to use, but hey, I put it here. As well as a viewing area off into the distance. Just a nice little quiet romantic area. So like whether you want to socialize or you want to be alone with somebody, either way, Blathers Museum has you covered. And last but not least, that just leaves the rest of this wilderness over here. Which, considering that, so there's wilderness over there, but there's a museum over there on the other side, I figured I'd split the difference and create something that is kind of artificial while also being wild. So we have these hybrid flowers encircling the water source, and, you can see the perfectly spaced trees. So this is kind of like a manicured area. I still consider it an extension of the museum. And that's it for the tour. Like I said, the whole point of this video is to show that a 5-star island doesn't need to be this, highly planned, highly terraformed, manufactured thing. It's, however you want to play, you can get there. Whether you want to go ahead and make these video game recreations of stuff, or you've got like an idea of creating something out of something like, kind of like an actual cityscape, or you want to try to expand upon the natural beauty of the island you got. No matter how you play the game, you can get to 5 stars. You don't have to quote-unquote ruin your island to get that. You don't have to do what everybody else does. You can do your own thing and you can get there. And I'm the proof. Bye-bye.